dark, I will find all your cousins. I'll tell them you love them, and I'll do what's right. We'll stand at the embassy, we're protesting everything, and I'll take your picture and you'll sing my song. It goes, I don't want you anymore.
Thank you.
I wish that you were here.
Hi, and welcome to This CanAsian Life. My name is Sue.
And I'm Gabby.
And we're here in Amiskwaciy-Waskagan, or Treaty 6 territory, here in Edmonton. It's a Métis homeland, and we're here to discuss CanAsian artistic identities across our province and with really awesome artists.
Heck yeah. So you may have noticed that the show has kind of shifted a bit. We used to have Rekha host it and me co-host it, but now I've been promoted to host along with Sue. Sue was actually one of our awesome interviewees and now has become a host of the show. So everyone welcome Sue to the show.
I'd like the record to show that I didn't need a promotion, I just got to host.
Some of us apparently need to work our way up, it turns out. But today we're excited to introduce our amazing guest,
Nisha Patel! Welcome to This CanAsian Life, my friend.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Heck yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah,
Excited.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and about your art and what you do.
Yeah, for sure. I grew up in Edmonton. I grew up in the south side of Edmonton, in various suburbs, and I think for me, being an artist was very out of reach, but it was something that I enjoyed a lot as a hobby. And once I was kind of like in my career, I couldn't really take a corporate job anymore. And I decided that this hobby that I'd had on the side, which was like writing poetry and performing it, was something that I really wanted to pursue. And so after that, I started trying to work in other genres and other mediums. I went back to school, which I'm currently in now. And I would say that like I do a lot still of performance work, a lot of performance poetry, but I've been trying to kind of like write experimental work. I've been trying to play more music and create digital work. And it's just like, I think I'm just in this like period of seeing how much I can produce and whether it's any good. And even if it's not any good, just to like keep following through. Yeah.
That's so awesome. And I know like for me, like I had a very similar path in terms of like not really recognizing how art could become a full-time gig and having that like revelation of like, okay, corporate world is not going to work. There's something so delicious about leaning into like the artistic part of yourself and letting that just live.
Yeah.
And speaking of delicious things.
Oh yes, we did some research here and we learned that you like certain things. So we're gonna bring them out here and you can tell us if our research was on point or not.
Yes.
Of course.
So
we got the snack bag.
Yeah, coming up first.
Amazing.
We got high chews.
Oh yeah.
Yes, did we get that right?
Amazing.
Yes.
I love high
So
chews.
far, success. Then we also got more high chews because we figured why stop at one. Then we also thought, we saw this and Sean was like, I don't know what this is, like, but we're bringing it out. And I said, cool.
This brand is great. They're like, they come in different shapes and they do this one, which is like a peach fettuccine, they call it.
What?
So it's like,
What?
but it's candy. And the peach one is very difficult to get because I buy all of them at the TNT.
Oh, so that's who Sean has to blame. That's
It's all
valid.
good,
That's
yeah.
valid.
Excellent snack choices.
And that's what, okay, these are cola gummy candies.
yeah, those are the cola ones. They're really good.
Okay, Gabby, get in there.
Yeah, okay, I'm gonna open this
All
up.
right.
That's-
Do you have like a favorite out of these?
Yeah, I was, I'm a big fan of the cola flavored high chews.
Ooh.
And they used to really only sell them in Asia. And so when I would go visit, I would like stockpile. And sometimes I would go to like multiple like Daisos or Don Quixotes to like make sure no one knew I was buying that many.
Oh.
And then I would come back and I would like give it to my family.
Oh, wow.
Oh my gosh, that is immediately so delicious.
It is.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
These are also super crazy. Also, I want you to open that up and see what it looks like. Because when you open it, you're like, is this a grape? But it's not.
Yeah. This is
It looks like a pure
really
grape.
does
Yeah,
look
truly.
like a grape.
It really does.
I think like the Japanese snacks are like the best imitation food. You know, it's like a whole art
Like
form.
real food to snack food.
Yeah, they're just really good at designing things that look like real food.
How did you stumble across them the very first time?
Well, like many people, I just like watch a lot of
Oh,
Japanese media, and I ended up going to Japan while my friend was working there, and I visited her in kind of this smaller prefecture, and we went around and we tried to do kind of like a mix of like really heavy tourist things, like making sure you go to all the big landmarks, and then like doing some more quieter stuff. And one of the things she was like, a lot of like Asian tourists do, like Chinese and Korean tourists, is like go to this like basically like Walmart, but
oh,
even like more intense of Japan called Don Quixote, and it's like you can just get everything and it's all very cheap, very good quality. And so I
Don
was
Quixote
there.
is
And
a
I went,
great
like,
name.
it was
Yeah.
kind of crazy. I just like filled up a cart full of random stuff and brought it back to try, and yeah, it was
That's
great.
glorious.
Yeah, that's like, I want to actually
Yeah, get in there.
Yeah,
They're so
for
good.
sure.
one of these.
These are so good. What do you have any others that like didn't make it onto the table today that you're like, this is if I can
The
have any
axe.
snack right now, this is one.
Well, I think I actually probably have bubble tea like 3 times a week, and I'm very lucky. Like the part of Edmonton I live in is just like, I think there's like 10 bubble tea shops within
Wow.
a 2-kilometer radius or something like that. And if one goes out of business, then usually 2 more pop up.
Oh,
So I literally can't find anywhere else in Edmonton where I am better suited to be close to a bubble tea shop. And it's just incredible. I just love that. Like I can walk to get bubble tea faster than they can make it if I call them. So
favorite bubble tea spot? Go.
Teepsy on White Ave.
Oh wow, without hesitation.
Wow,
All right,
no
most-
hesitation. Love it. Well, that's so great. I also love a bubble tea. But I'm interested to know about, let's talk about some of your projects. Let's talk about what you're working on right now. Yeah, please let us know. What you got on your radar right now?
Yeah, you know, it's like, it can be such a complicated question. When I had worked on mostly poetry related things, I ended up putting out a book and going through the whole like formal corporate process of like getting a book out into the world. But a lot of performance poets, they do these like shorter collections. They like sometimes print them at home and they give them out to their friends, or they trade them for other zines and stuff that people make. And that part was like really fun for me. And so I've been trying to really kind of put my work out there in more community friendly ways, because I don't think like a big, you know, book that you have to go get at Indigo is always accessible. And I'm a really big proponent of trying to make a lot of my work free or as low cost as possible. And I ended up going back to school during the pandemic as well, just because it was like I had to quit my job. There was no funding left because I was working as an arts producer and we weren't producing anything.
Yeah, that's always the.
So I left, and I started studying critical disability theory from like an academic standpoint. So a lot of philosophy, feminist philosophy, especially queer philosophy. And you kind of, when you come from a community practice, like it can be really daunting to like have to read, like especially like these old white thinkers, because I don't speak any other language other than English that I can read in right now. So I'm sure there's other schools of thought that I'm not accessing. And it was like a big question of like, how do I bring these things that are like really mind-blowing back to the community? And, you know, like my body also started falling apart during that time. And I was like, I really can't talk about anything else except the fact that I just like continue to have ongoing failures of various parts of my body. And like, it's just really informed my work now. And so most of what I do centers around disability. So even though I'm learning to write in more forms, I'm working on a graphic novel, I'm working on a children's book, all of it comes back to like really centering the disabled experience and like what it means to expand the notion of what we think good life is. You know, like we often think that disabled people can't live good lives, or that you know, for people who don't have disabilities, they think the worst thing that could happen to them would be to end up in a wheelchair or to have an illness. And there's just like, there's so much beauty, I think, when you enter the world in that position of being disabled. And I think you see the world differently.
Totally.
Yeah, the money, like that's insane. It just dawned on me that like, yeah, you're right. Like so many times growing up, you hear like, hey, don't do that. You don't like end up in a wheelchair. And it's like, that is, instead of being like, we just want you to be safe. You could really stop it there and just be like, just do this to be safe. But instead like do the extra mile and make it like, that's the worst thing that can happen to you. So while you're saying that, I was like, that is the thing. Why is that the thing? Like,
I think it all comes, sorry.
No, all good, you're all good.
I was just gonna say, I think that all comes back to like the idea of like, you know, the social model versus the medical model of like, you know, are we gonna change society or are we gonna change the human being? So I'm interested to know where the intersections of disability and being a CanAsian artist lie for you. How have those two parts of your identity impacted you?
I think like there's like a really important, I think maybe like dimension to take into account, which is that the majority of the people in the world who are disabled are people of color. They are Black people, they are Indigenous people, they are Asian people, they are people who are not from the global minority, which are white people. And many of these people are also in the global South. We come from countries where it has been okay for global superpowers to disable us, right? And so the people who remain most able-bodied, who also end up representing disability in many ways, right? You go to a doctor's office, it's like a white girl with anorexia, it's a white man with diabetes, you know, it's a white cancer kid. And it's just like the actual people who are disabled are people who look like me. They're people who look like my parents. But what ends up happening is that we normalize disability for people who are not white. And so we don't see it as this like big thing that's impacting them, because we think it's okay for every other Asian person we know to have diabetes. We think it's okay for all the farm laborers and stuff like that to have like debilitating physical impairments 50 years into their life. But it's not normal, but we've normalized it. So we no longer think of disability as something that is inherent to our populations. We think of it as something that only happens in sporadic cases.
Yeah, that's, wow. I'm learning a lot. I'm trying to like think up of questions. I'm like, oh no, I'm just listening. This is good. The question I had kind of like, how often, like, do you find that it is kind of difficult to have these talks, or are people more open as you kind of like share more art and everything with them, or are they kind of still more closed off on the idea?
Yeah, the word disabled is like such a bad word in Asian communities.
Okay.
I find, you know, as someone who is at the intersection of many different types of identities, sometimes, you know, I think sometimes it's easier to be fat in a family full of very thin people than it is to tell them that I am disabled, right? Or that tell them that I have struggles with certain things, because things like fat phobia are very normalized in Asian culture. But being disabled, again, even though it's very common, is thought of as like this really terrible fate. And in a way, like when people have had to live through the last 3 years, the language around it is that this has been like a mass disabling phenomenon. So even if you recover from illness, some people have like these long-term conditions, and people didn't know how to deal with it. They still don't know how to live disabled life because we've demonized it so much. And so when it comes to reaching out to community, it's almost like you need people who have been disabled for longer to like introduce you to it, right? And that work of introducing your own family first, or, you know, your relatives, like that also happens on a really personal level. And it's really difficult because it can make people very sad. It can make people uncomfortable. I get sad and uncomfortable all the time, you know, when something is very challenging, or when I have to cancel on yet another plan, or I miss class or stuff like that. These are not things that I did 10 years ago, right? Like I had certain things in control that I don't anymore. And like you have to manage your own grief, but suddenly even when you tell people, you're managing their grief as well. And it's because we don't know how to talk about stuff like death. We don't know how to talk about stuff like dying. We don't know how to talk about pain. Almost no one knows how to talk about pain, right? Like if you know someone who is constantly in pain, you know, like how do you interact with them? Do you ask them to keep coming out even if they say no? Do you make them do physical things that you really like to do? You know, like how do we, you know, talk about their agency or their choices? And doing that with family especially has just been impossible because, you know, like I have an Asian mother who is very determined to continue to give me as much support as possible with the maximum amount of criticism.
Yeah, that's the trade-off that you give off.
Unfortunately, she's the best cook I know as well. So it's like, again, it's like these are really complicated familial relationships that we have. So for her, like she's reaching back on like thousands-year-old Ayurvedic medicine sometimes, much of which has been debunked as I'm trying to deal with an illness that has only really, some of them have only had treatments in the last 30 years, right? So it's like a lot of clashing when it comes to this stuff. Yeah,
totally. And I definitely relate in terms of like, you know, moms trying to bring in like the oldest possible version of medicine to be like, it'll help, trust and believe. You know, my mom, if it can't be solved by putting Vicks on it, then it's not, you know, we're hooped. So I'm interested to know if you are entering an artistic space or even a space with, you know, family, how do I even phrase this? How does access look to you? What does access in an artistic space look like to you? And what would you like to see there before you having to ask for it?
Yeah, I think this has become like such a big question when, you know, things shut down for a lot of people and suddenly it was like, oh, like I can't just go certain places. I can't go in this place. I can't use those stairs, right? My friend needs wheelchair access, or maybe it's like a sensory thing, right? I actually can't go see an IMAX movie, which I found out the hard way.
Oh, really?
Because of like the many concussions I've had. Like, you know, like it kind of messes up your brain. And it's like, well, there's things that you can do for an artistic space, for instance, that really make it easy, right? So you can make sure you don't have like flashing strobe lights without warning, right? So that's like a thing you can do. You can make sure there are non-alcoholic options for people to partake in. That's really big in like the Muslim artistic community. Many of them can't go to a ton of events that only take place in bars, right? And that's something like we don't always consider. You have to consider people's, you know, sensory needs and food needs and, you know, space needs and stuff like that. And it's just like, there's actually a lot of dimensions to it. And then you get to things like, do I have interpretation for people who are, you know, hard on hearing? Do I have the ability for people to have subtitles? You know, how much can we plan ahead? And suddenly it becomes like everything is a production that requires management and collaboration, right? So you can't just hire an artist to come into a space. Now you have to talk to them over a period of weeks. You have to ask them what they're doing so that your audience can be prepared for it. So presenting artistic work, I think the conversation has shifted and people are doing like these accessibility audits, you know, like they're getting consultants and other folks to come in and be like, okay, like this is where your access needs to be improved. Access in like not just like a mental sense or a physical sense, but overall like in a well-being way as well. But at the same time, those needs are going to continue to change, right? Like access is not like a binary thing. You can't just like have access or not have access. You have to have like an ongoing conversation. And right now, like I don't even know if it's possible to have like a fully accessible event without requiring disabled people to constantly have to tell people what their disabilities are. You know, like if I'm coming into this space, I'm sorry, I just talk so much, and I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna have to go check my blood sugar halfway through. There like might not be an easy way for me to do that, you know? And it's just like, I see especially these young people who I teach poetry to or other writing to, and they don't know how to navigate the world without having to tell everyone everything all the time. And that too is like going to be a problem when you're 30 years old and incredibly neurotic because of it. So it's all like, I think, an ongoing conversation.
Mm-hmm. And I imagine it must be like quite exhausting to consistently be like, here's why, instead of just being like, hey, like, can we not have like the lights on here? Or like, I'm trying to think of examples is like, where it's like, can I just say this and just have it done? Instead they're like, but how come? And you're like, well, you see, because, and you have to like explain every step to them, which I can understand, like people want to know, but at the same time, repeating it multiple times a day, I must imagine is also exhaustive, where it's like, I need this to happen, but I feel like me constantly repeating why I have to explain it, and like, it's almost like you have to prove that you have said thing before someone will like turn a light off or do something, which is always like annoying anytime we see it, because we're like, just do this thing and like it'll work. Like,
I think a really common example is like if you go to a concert, like many of these local small venues where your friends are performing, like many of them are standing room only or limited seating or bar seating and stuff like that. And it's just like, if you ask them for accommodation, even if you go on Ticketmaster, they have stuff like accessible seating. And there's a picture of like the person in a wheelchair. And that's it. It's like the only conception some of these places have of accommodation is wheelchair or standing for 3 hours. And I'm like, there's a lot of different reasons why that might not be possible for a person, you know? And it's incredible because like there's this weird myth that we all have rights when we're disabled, but that all we have to do is like tell people and they'll magically be afforded to us. That's actually not true, right? Like we value private business over accessibility all the time.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You know, and it's just like, even if it's just like, hey, you need a chair, we will bring out a chair at Union Hall, but they don't really do that, you know? So all those kinds of things, like if I can't stand for 3 or 4 hours, then they're not there for me anymore.
Plus having it like kind of come out to you, like that example, it's like they brought out one chair for you. You're also like, great, now I feel like the pressure's on me and everyone's gonna be like, how come they get a chair? I don't get a chair. And you're like, great, now you've opened that.
They're so close, right? I'm like, you know what? You should get a chair. We should all get chairs. Like, like, you're
chairs
so
for
close
everyone.
to figuring it out.
It's truly,
just go one step further.
You know, you've mentioned that it's been tough not to center your life and your work. So tell us about what you're working on right now that you said that it's kind of been on the back burner for a while.
Yeah, I'm hoping to create like my first hour-long like solo, I would say like poetry sound-based show, main stage show. Like I want to really develop it into like a full production. And like, you know, I've put these ideas down, but I did some other work where I produced like a short film of about 7-8-ish poems around themes of disability and just like struggle and like some of the different aspects of that. And I'd put them together with like different types of like, at one point I was doing some animation, just like very simple line drawing. Another point, another thing that I did in that video was I built like a VTuber type of model, and I rigged it to my movements, my body movements, and I used that avatar to like perform the poem. And then I had it like captured using like a Vroid software, and I added that into the film as well. So I was like doing a lot of like really experimental things, and I ended up debuting like this 20-minute kind of film where I was just playing around with what I could do with software and like a camera and like digital music. And you know, like it didn't go anywhere else. It debuted with the organization that had commissioned me to do it, and I never did anything else with it. I shared some clips here and there, especially, you know, on the International Day of Peoples with Disabilities and stuff like that. And I just didn't know what else to do. So I'm hoping now to take some of that and adapt it into what I'm hoping will be like a very ambitious, very big, in-person plus like streamed online show that looks like a theater show. You know, it's not going to look like a bar unless I want it to look like a bar on purpose, but I really want people to be like, yes, I'm going to sit quietly, and I'm going to come to your show, you know. And I think like a lot of performance artists like dream of a stage like that, and instead of just waiting for it to be offered to me, I've decided to just try to like put it together and then pitch it myself.
Yes.
Oh.
100%. It's always been something, like, you know, I so admire when people decide that they're just going to like take their fate into their own hands and make the thing they want to make. That's so exciting. I wanted to chat about your about the software that you were talking about building into your show. How has integrating software into your process impacted kind of like the order of operations for you? Like, have you found that like you've written something, put it through the software, and then realize it needed to be something else, or like has it been? Yeah, tell me about it.
Yeah, there's so much interesting technology. Much of it is like very formative or requires like a lot of very specific like niche knowledge, but once you kind of get into it, you realize like there's like entire worlds of people doing art that you don't even really understand, and that they all have their own communities. And so something that I'd seen a lot of as someone who really loves playing video games and loves being like on, you know, Twitter to see other artists and stuff like that, was that the phenomenon of like the VTuber came out. And so these are like virtual avatars that folks who do streaming or other things use in place of showing their own face. And many of them, again, use systems where they put sensors, almost like a Wii, on their body. And they create these models. Sometimes they all have like preset, you know, proportions or clothing choices, which is the kind that I was playing with. And then they are able to have that avatar move the way a normal body would, right? Even like sometimes the mouth will move when they speak. So they feel more comfortable using this avatar in place of like their own body and their own face. And I was like, that's such an interesting phenomenon when you think of people being disabled in their bodies. And I'm like, is a person their body? You know, like that was like the fundamental question for me. And I was like, how far can we take that? Like, is it still my body if I'm hiding behind this like, you know, VTube avatar? And the software that I like was using was like this free software because I was just playing around with it. And I was like, what are all these like funky things I can do to the face and the outfit and stuff like that? So I think like, you know, at one point I had like 20 different avatars that I'd created, and some of them were like dressed just like I dress. Other ones were like in like big cyber kind of like suits and stuff like that. Because we think of the future as like this very angular metallic thing. And I was like, oh, like, does that mean like a future disabled body is also like robotic, right? What if it has cyborg eyes? Is that person disabled? You know, what if it has cyborg arms and stuff like that? So it was like, it was really exciting, but also it was really awkward because I was sitting there watching this thing motion capture my own body, and I was like, oh, like I'm very aware now of how my body moves. And I don't know if other people are like that, but I don't like hearing my own voice, right? You don't like hearing it back. And as a performer, that's very difficult.
It's seldom, like, I never find many people, like, even on, like, playback for things. I'm like, we're gonna play this back. I'm like, I'm gonna leave the room. I'm like, how come? Like, I hate my voice. And you're like, that's weird. You're a voice actor. Like, I can't stand it. I'm like, huh. But, like, I find, like, I've only met 2 people who are like, yeah, I'm okay with my voice. Everyone else is like, if you play this back for me, I'm gonna plug my ears. I'm like, why? You have a good voice. But I guess, like, to your own self, you're, like, super critical. And I find that that's, like, one of the hardest, like, things to do is, like, to let that go and just be like, look, I'm me, here's what I'm doing, here's what's happening. I wanted to follow up with a question. You had said that you would love to see your work get promoted more. And I was like, I found that like sometimes projects get finished and then like presented and then shelved, and they never seem to go anywhere else to like get that audience like attention or any attention on it. Where would you kind of like to see more of your projects presented? Like,
yeah, it's so intense when you do visual work or audio work and if you don't want to be online, like what do you do with it? You know, it's so hard for people to connect with you if you're not putting it on social media or on YouTube or all these other platforms. Maybe you put it on your own website that you design, that you pay for, but how many people are typing in your URL and coming to it? And how do you tell those people? Do you put it on a card or whatever? Like, it's just so complicated. And part of like wanting an audience for me means balancing the idea that I have to constantly create in order to maintain an audience. And instead I've been trying to do this like field of dreams kind of ethos, which is that I am going to build a good thing and I'm going to wait for good people to come to it. And I will say, like, at some point during the pandemic, I was like, I'm going to be an influencer. Like, I was like, what does it take? It takes a good camera and some nice clothes. I was like, I'm going to do it. Bought a bunch of nice clothes, started taking these photos, did not go anywhere. Like, it was not for me. I got super tired of it. I didn't want to talk about, you know, fat fashion every day. I love fat fashion, but I was like, I don't want to make content. Like, it just wasn't for me. I had a Patreon that like 2 people who are my friends like donate to every month, and I don't do anything on it. I was like, I can't monetize every part of my experience, and I was super bad at it. And when I let that go and I went back to just, you know, I toured a book online that I released during the pandemic, and I went back to just like, I'm going to talk about the work. I'm going to talk about how things made me feel. I'm going to talk about process. I'm going to share with people how much money I'm being paid or which grants I didn't get. And that is where I found community. You know, it's other artists, it's other people who look like you and feel like you. And you don't really want the rando people who are going to see something from you once and then never come back.
Well, I'm also glad you didn't take the road of controversy and poor apology, which seems to be like the influencer, like how you get there. But yeah.
Yeah, I still think I could make like a very good like philanthropist wife. You know, like I could pick charities very easily, but
Ooh. Yeah. Well, speaking of things that you can pick.
Oh.
Oh. Hey, we have a question for you, Nisha.
That's right.
How CanAsian are you? All right, we got some buzzers coming in.
Oh, God.
Boom, boom, boom.
This is the trivia show where Gabby will not win.
Well, that's a lie. We'll find out. But for the folks at home, yes, very simple. Our wonderful team here is going to ask a question. One of us will buzz in. Whoever buzzes and answers correctly gets a point. And by the end of the questions, winner chicken dinner to the highest points.
They get to take home the high twos.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Number 1. In what year were South Asians denied to vote in Vancouver? A. 1897. B. 1907. C. 1927.
I'm going to take 1927.
Wrong.
Oh.
I think it's 1907.
Correct. 1907. This racist law was fought for 40 years until 1947, when South Asian immigrants were finally able to become Canadian citizens.
That is unbelievable.
Wow,
Yeah, there was Sikh farmers there before, so they would have done the majority of the advocacy.
Well, that's just it, right? All right.
Too bad this isn't a short answer situation.
Why can't it be, Sean? Tell us. Yeah.
Question 2. Henry Lau is a singer-songwriter, actor, and classical violinist who was a member of this K-pop group. A. Super Junior M. B. Epic High. C. BTS.
Super Junior M, and he also has a Chinese restaurant in Seoul that I've been to, and his new album just came out.
Dang!
Okay, yeah, that's a... Okay.
Correct.
Imagine if he was like wrong.
Henry was born in Toronto and speaks English, Mandarin, Korean, French, and Cantonese fluently.
Oh, Henry's a polyglot. That's awesome.
And he was in a K-pop group, but he was in the M version, which was their Chinese arm. So they did work and song in Chinese as well.
I'm learning a lot today.
Yeah, I know. We're learning so much. I love it.
I finally got
We got to
one.
keep this up because we got to just make
Okay,
sure
well,
that Gabby can actually
I
buzz
had
in.
no,
So
I was
you're doing
so
great.
underprepared the
Thank
last
you,
question, let me tell
Here
you.
we go.
Question 3. What is the title of Rupi Kaur's first self-published book? A. Milk and Honey. B. Homebody. Who was first?
It's Milk and Honey.
Correct.
Yeah.
Milk and Honey emerged from Kaur's journey with Sikhi, which speaks to the ideas of balance, self-acceptance, identity, and humility.
It was also then republished with a major publisher after it started taking off. Yeah.
Nice. Okay, well.
Question 4, Gabby's...
Question
I'm going to
4,
buzz in and
Gabby.
just pick A because at this
You
point...
just buzz in.
Yeah, I'm just going to... Yeah.
You go ahead.
What is the name of this Edmonton-based community-focused zine centering radical food stories, art, and culture? A. Radishly Radical. B. God of Cookery. C. Hungry Zine.
Hungry Zine.
Correct.
Yes, thank God I got one. Yeah, go
Hungry
on.
Zine is published by Kyla Pascal and Catherine Guanyin Lennon, who are amplifying voices that are missing from traditional food media.
Ooh.
I'm never sad about food media.
That's right.
I want all the food media.
Yeah.
Question 5. The first mosque in Canada was built in 1938 in this city.
It's the Al Rashid Mosque. And it's built in, it was,
In this city.
for
Which city?
Edmonton? No, Blackfish.
No, it's in Edmonton.
Is it Edmonton?
Yeah.
Okay, so you said Lacklivish. Do you want me to read it out, or?
It's Al Rashid Mosque, and it's in
I think Nisha already said it. Ding, 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 Edmonton.
He just paused, and I was like, wait a minute.
You said you changed.
Why did you just say yes?
No, because you stuttered and you didn't say Edmonton, and then
I
you
said
said
Edmonton, and you
Lacklivish.
paused, and I was like, not Edmonton. I don't know. Like, I guess whatever, fine.
Al Rashid Mosque today welcomes over 90,000 Muslim community members, comprised of over 60 cultural backgrounds. So.
Oh. Well, look at that, everybody. Look at
Yes,
that.
this is good. Congratulations on winning.
Nisha! Oh my gosh, yeah. All those high chews, they're for you.
I'm just thankful I got one, so I'll take it. If I got none, that would have been just, but it's all good. Thank you for being so awesome and actually adding to the trivia because I didn't know. I was like, what does that even mean? And you're like, M means this. I'm like, great, fantastic.
Yeah.
So maybe you should do our trivia. Or Sean's not worried about his job. And I'm like, no, never mind, don't worry about it. But I had a question for you about where can we find you and follow you?
All my social media handles are just at another Nisha. I was also able to integrate that everywhere. My preferred platforms are Instagram, where I post links to everything else. But if you're old school, you can find everything on the website and on Twitter and on Facebook. And yeah, it's out there. You can also buy stuff if you want. So all my short collections are available at Audrey's Books, as well as my debut book, Coconut, as you know, which is a very popular Asian racial slur, and that's available if you want to do that. It's very popular for teenage girls, especially as Christmas presents.
No, that's a great idea.
But they're very sad, and they are definitely not family-friendly poems. So I would just say, if you're getting them, just
Just a
don't
heads up.
tell any like moms or anything like that.
No,
Yeah.
that's fair. Yeah, that's good that you added that.
Yeah, good looking
They're
out.
like, here you go, man. This is for my 5-year-old child. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
No, that's wonderful. Thank you again for being on the show.
No problem.
We appreciate having you.
Great. Well, thanks so much for hanging out with us and letting us get to know you. I can't wait to see all the things you're going to make. And thank you for watching This CanAsian Life!
I was really impressed with what she knew about Henry Lau. See, I thought I was a big Henry Lau fan, but I didn't know that he actually owned a restaurant. So she imparted a lot of knowledge.
She bringing a lot of light to it, made me think about a lot of things that, you know, I don't regularly think about. You can tell she's very much a person trying to pass along a message in the most kind-hearted and wholehearted way.
There aren't many conversations that intersect between talking about art and disability, and so just to have someone like Nisha that also has that cultural lens to be at our table to speak is it's just amazing, and so grateful to have someone here in Edmonton that is just speaks and fights for what's right. So
yeah, Nisha is like amazing. Like I could listen to Nisha talk about like her practice and like everything that she wants to see change and evolve in like the art psychology. I could listen to that forever. So yeah.
Literally, like, I was watching her and listening a whole lot, and I was like, I should ask questions. I'm still hosting this, but like, she's just such a wealth of information. So it was great.
And Gabby did not win trivia, so I
Yeah.
feel great.